Howdy guys, Jimmy Song here. In this video, I wanted to talk a little bit about bike shedding. What is it and how does it apply to sort of the technical discourse around Bitcoin? Well, bike shedding is this idea. The story comes from some sort of old nuclear power plant that they wanted to upgrade or something, and they had a schematic for a new nuclear power plant, and they wanted to discuss it in a meeting, and at the meeting were all sorts of people, including people that weren't really that familiar, say, with nuclear power plant design. Anyway, it turned out that the meeting was dominated by a discussion of the bike shed that was right next to the power plant. Now, bike shed, in the grand scheme of things, doesn't really matter that much, but it happens to be something that people can talk about. And, if you're not like a nuclear engineer, you're probably not going to have much to say about the design of a nuclear power plant. You might just say, "Oh, yeah, that sounds good," or "Hey, like you don't want to sound stupid, so you don't really talk about any of that stuff that much." But a bike shed, you can talk about real well, because you can be very opinionated about a bike shed, and this sort of thing happens a lot in these sort of meetings where people talk about stuff that they can understand or they can have strong opinions about. It's a lot like sort of like an old Dilbert cartoon or something like that, right? Like the managers don't really know the technical details, so the few things that they can talk about, they'll have super strong opinions on and things like that. That's what bike shedding is, and it's talking about the inconsequential and missing the big picture. To a large degree, I think that's what's happened during about the debate with Roger Ver that I had on the cruise. A lot of people are sort of bike shedding and saying, okay, well, Jimmy walked off stage, or Jimmy did this, or Jimmy wouldn't let Roger talk, or Roger wasn't was doing X, Y, or Z, and it's not anything that actually matters. It's all about like the behavior of the participants that's become the story rather than the actual substance of the argument. And I'm going to tell you that I don't think that adds anything. Now, it's perfectly within your rights to talk about that, and if that if you want to, that's totally fine. You want to call me a child, or Roger a child, or whatever, that's totally fine. But the big thing is the actual argument. And there's actually been very few, I've been looking for them. There's been actually very few substantive critiques of the actual argument. Instead, all anyone wants to talk about is, there being one mic, and, Roger trying to grab my mic, or, somebody else bringing a mic, and then me walking off stage trying to rectify something with the sound people. And, like all of that stuff seems to be dominating. And my plea to you is that, if you talk about that stuff, that's kind of inconsequential. I tried to keep it at a level that was actually something that people could discuss. I'm not talking about the nitty gritty of SegWit, right? Like, I'm talking about economics. I was making the argument that Bitcoin is Austrian and Bitcoin Cash is really kind of Keynesian, and that's the thing that led to the debate in the first place. I made a video about why I think Roger is very Keynesian in his approach to Bitcoin Cash, and it was kind of sad because Roger didn't really engage me at that level. Instead, he just sort of appealed to his own authority and sort of made all these fallacious logical arguments, and as a result, like the story, at least on RBTC and other places, was, hey, watch Jimmy walk off stage or do X, Y, or Z. It's not anything about the argument, and that doesn't really advance anything, right? Now, to some degree, I understand, right? Like with Bitcoin Cash, Roger is the very main driver. If you discredit Roger, to a large degree, you're discrediting Bitcoin Cash. But if you discredit me, you're not really discrediting Bitcoin per se. I mean, like Bitcoin doesn't care whatever it is that I do. I mean, I'm trying to do things for Bitcoin, but I mean, other than a little loss of reputation on my part, the rest of the Bitcoin economy just sort of chugs along whether I'm in it or not. And this is one of the comforting things about it. It's decentralized, and I don't really matter, right? Like, and like, pretty much anyone can be replaced, and that's a good thing, right? Like, you can take any person out of a city. Cities are relatively decentralized, other than the government. You can take any one person out of the city; it doesn't really matter, right? Like it's decentralized, so it keeps chugging along. But Bitcoin Cash is very centralized, so they feel this need to like sort of defend Roger no matter what. But and a lot of those people are attacking me for this, want to discredit me because he walked off stage or something like that, and don't want to engage in the actual technical discussion. Now I have been looking, and there is at least one pretty substantive argument, and that's by Chris Pacia, who I've debated before, and he actually went through and actually responded to all of that, and I at least owe him first of all, thank you, Chris, because you're actually engaging in a technical debate instead of sort of calling names or whatever and saying, oh, you know what, he's completely discredited because he walked off stage to, go check with the sound guy why there was a second mic. Instead, it's all about, he's actually engaging, and I commend him for that, and I owe him at least to go and read everything that he wrote. Haven't yet. It's a very long piece, and it's. But at least he's engaging at that level instead of, hey, look and point and laugh. Those people, they aren't adding anything. They're adding zero, because that doesn't take us anywhere. It's all about just sort of discrediting a particular person. Now that works in politics. But this isn't politics. This is money, and those things sort of operate differently. And if you haven't discovered that, you pretty much soon will, because regardless of whether or not I'm around, Bitcoin will continue to exist. Anyway, I just had to kind of get that off my chest, because so many people seem to be bike shedding and thinking that that's a good thing. I don't think it is, and I think you're actually detracting from sort of the narrative or the attractiveness of Bitcoin by going there, because anyone that's actually thinking on a logical level knows that that's not where the actual argument is. You're arguing about a freaking bike shed instead of the nuclear power plant that's next to it. So hopefully that helps you. That said, thank you, to those of you that are watching this video. It probably doesn't apply to you. So I guess I'm just sort of trying to elevate the discourse, if you will. Anyway, this song is done.